someone didn't make it home, then another and another. People were vanishing. No trace, no reason. At the center of it all was a man. He looked ordinary. That's why no one suspected him. The year was 2000, a quiet neighborhood in Seoul. Late at night, the streets were nearly empty. Inside one home, the lights were still on. A television played softly as someone finished their day. Everything felt normal. Then someone stood at the door. No knock, no warning. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the door slowly opened. Forced, but quiet. A figure stepped inside. The footsteps were slow and careful, almost impossible to hear. Then everything went still again. No screams, no struggle, just silence. The next day, the house was found different. The door was open. The inside was disturbed, but nothing had been stolen. No clear motive. And most importantly, there was no one inside. Time passed and the same kind of incident happened again. It was late at night, a quiet place. The method felt similar. The silence was the same. The scenes were unusually clean. There were no unnecessary traces left behind. It felt calculated. Police began comparing the cases, but they couldn't be certain. The locations were different. The victims had no clear connection. At first, each case was treated separately, but those working the investigation began to feel it. This wasn't random. Someone was moving with purpose, but that person remained unseen. He was patient. He didn't rush. He chose the right moment carefully. A person alone, a quiet place, a time when help would be difficult to reach. He understood all of it. His approach felt natural. His voice was calm. His expression was ordinary. There was nothing about Susikim that felt dangerous. So no one questioned him. Step by step, he moved closer until it was too late. After that, everything ended quickly, quietly, and once again, he disappeared. Police began to sense that something was wrong, but the limitations were clear. There were no witnesses, no solid evidence, no clear connections between cases. They were always one step behind. By the time they arrived, he was already gone. The number of cases increased, but the answers did not. The investigation repeated itself. Records piled up, but nothing changed. Over time, his methods began to change. He chose different targets, used different approaches. At first, it seemed random, but it wasn't. It was intentional. He was avoiding patterns, breaking any trace that could lead back to him. Every time police tried to follow him, he shifted direction. Every time they tried to predict him, he changed. The investigation slowly fell into confusion. As the cases spread, the city began to change. Night no longer felt the same. People walked faster, glancing over their shoulders more often than before. Being alone started to feel dangerous. Even familiar places felt different. Inside elevators, silence became uncomfortable. No one made eye contact. No one spoke. People avoided empty streets. They avoided strangers. And sometimes they avoided each other. The fear wasn't loud. It didn't come with warnings. It was quiet, slow, and always present. The biggest problem was uncertainty. No one knew who he was. No one knew where he was. No one knew when he would appear. And that uncertainty became the greatest fear. Then one day, a small clue appeared. At first, it seemed insignificant, something that could easily be overlooked, but something about it felt familiar. It didn't fit as a coincidence. Police decided not to ignore it. They reopened old records, cases that had already been set aside. They compared timelines. They checked locations again. At first, nothing changed, but slowly, patterns began to emerge. Details that once seemed unrelated started to align. The scattered pieces were no longer random. They were connected. A pattern began to form, and that pattern pointed in one direction. One person. They still couldn't be completely certain, but for the first time, the investigation had a path. Not just guesses, not just repetition, a real direction. And once that direction appeared, everything started moving faster. The man appeared ordinary, too ordinary, the kind of face that would disappear in a crowd, but small inconsistencies began to surface. Minor details that didn't quite fit. Those details slowly came together. Police followed the trail, and then everything connected. All the cases pointed to one man. He had opportunities to escape, but he didn't run. When the moment came, he was arrested. He didn't resist. He didn't panic. He simply stood there, as if he already knew this moment would come. Inside the interrogation room, time felt slow. The air was cold. The lights were bright. At first, he denied everything. Short answers, repeated denials, but the evidence kept building. Piece by piece, it closed in on him. The investigator said nothing. He simply placed the files on the table. Photos, records, timelines. Silence filled the room. Then something changed. He stopped speaking, and then he began. One case, then another, and another. He didn't stop. The confession continued. At first, it came slowly. Short answers, careful words, but then it didn't stop. Each statement revealed another piece of the truth. Cases that once seemed unrelated began to connect. One by one, the fragments aligned. Timelines matched, details overlapped, everything started to make sense. The missing pieces were finally filled. Questions that had remained unanswered for so long were no longer questions. They were facts. The investigators didn't interrupt. They didn't react. They simply listened and wrote everything down. The sound of a pen moving across paper filled the room, calm, steady, almost unreal. He spoke without hesitation, as if he had already accepted it, as if this moment had been waiting for him. And then one realization became clear. This had never been random. It had never been chaos. He had been planning it for a long time, carefully, patiently, and for all that time, no one had stopped him. The case was closed. He was caught. But the questions remained. Why did it take so long? Why couldn't it be stopped? Why did no one notice? Those questions still remain unanswered. The case is over, but not completely. A quiet night, a familiar street. In moments like these, how much do we overlook? The things we ignored, the moments we passed by. They might have been signs. Even now, someone may be walking home, unaware. He wasn't special, and that is why he was so hard to find. And maybe he was never far away. Maybe he was always closer than we thought. This story ends here, but in the darkness, stories remain. Will you stay for the next one? Dark Case Hub.